Clear. We hear about it.
We'll hear about it Saturday, right?
We should be on.
Which video?
We're on 5 o'clock.
I guess my mic
Play.
is good.
I think my mic is good.
Start the recorder. Debbie,
Which one?
start the recorder. Start the rolling.
Which Roland?
Clearwater. Sharpton. We'll be right live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. This is what happens live. Come on, Debbie.
To get rid of Florida's Stand Your Ground law is turning really political. A rally for Marquise McLaughlin brought in a prominent civil rights leader, Trayvon Martin's family, and Democratic candidates for governor.
ABC Action News reporter Michael Paluska explains why they say the upcoming elections are very important, more so now than ever.
What do we want?
Justice! Nearly 2,000 voices chanting in unison outside and inside a Clearwater church. Reverend Al Sharpton standing next to the parents of Trayvon Martin, killed 6 years ago, and the family of Marquise McLaughlin, the father shot and killed a few weeks ago in another controversial Stand Your Ground shooting.
When it is white shooting black, astronomically, they are let go with Stand Your Ground laws.
Democrats running for higher office in Florida flanking Sharpton, all vowing, if elected, to get rid of the Stand Your Ground law.
It's a racist thing, a black and white thing.
Linda Dunton is planning to make her voice heard when she votes in November. Dunton has a son that is disabled, and when she learned the July 19th shooting was over a handicapped parking spot, she thought it could have been her.
Not one black person ever confronted me about parking in the handicapped spot. I was confronted by white men and white women, but more men.
This is bigger than Stand Your Ground.
So this is about the Stand Your Ground law and justice for Marquise McLaughlin, but a lot of people are angry at the Pinellas County Sheriff because he never filed charges in the first place.
You, sir, are a sheriff. You're not a jury, and he needs his day in court.
The state attorney now has the case and will decide to drop the case, file charges against Michael Draka, or let a grand jury decide.
And we will be involved until we see the prosecution and arrest of the killer of Marquise McLaughlin.
In Clearwater, Michael Paluska, ABC Action News.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, this is a replay of Trayvon Martin 6 years ago, which took them 45 days before they got
Arrested.
an arrest on, what was his name? The shooter in that case?
You talking
Zimmerman.
about Zimmerman.
Zimmerman.
Zimmerman, which had a father that was a magistrate judge, and the attorney general of that state denied denied us the ability to lock the man up. So it took us 45 days of protesting like we're doing now with Reverend Sharpton to get the man arrested. So here we go again, 6 years later, with the same injustice. Stand Your Ground law. So, and that's 33 different states have this law.
That have that law in place.
Right? So we have today with us Mario Talansano.
That's correct.
And your job was mortgage banking?
I was in banking, yes.
Tell us a little bit about your profession at the time.
I started out community organizing years ago. In 1972, there were no jobs, so we all applied for the police department. We all passed the exam with flying colors. I went through the whole background check. Mayor Beam drives the city into bankruptcy. The state takes over. There goes my potential career as a cop. I drove a cab, actually. I was driving a cab in college. And then my cousin calls me up and says to me, I'm working at the Carpenters Union. Come down and work. Was there a couple of years, and a friend calls me up and says, you know, we need to start organizing. At that time, the Italian community needed some help. And
We're talking what year?
1974, because I graduated in 72.
Okay.
74. And we started organizing. We had all this, you know, we had Wilson's Leather, who Channel 9 was advertising, you know, the Untouchables and everything that made Italians look bad. Subsequent to that, we got involved in local politics, and then we moved on from there. And then in 1978, I got an opportunity to start a new career in real estate. I went back to my old neighborhood to rebuild it. Old Fort Apache.
Fort Apache?
Fort Apache. Fort Apache. It was turned into a little house on the prairie by the time I got there, because after the oil embargo, the poor landlords, they couldn't maintain the
70s,
buildings,
okay.
and they set fire to them.
Right.
And then the insurance companies pulled on the map that big red line.
Red line
South
district.
of 176th Street was now considered the South Bronx. I saw more banks close. Anyway, I worked with this parish priest and another young lady, and there were 3 of us, and he was a very strong advocate for the neighborhood. Italian man, worked his way, really was very instrumental in the building up of the South Bronx.
Okay.
We grew from 3 to now he's got like 500 people. He's older now, retired. I had a 19-year career. I left 19 years later, and then I opened up my own construction company. Worked for 10 years. Worked for New York City Fire Department as a contractor, minority contractor actually. City of New York, Department of Housing and Development, Town of Harrison, Mount Vernon, HPD, and Port Authority, doing bridges and tunnels.
Oh,
You know,
the
we
big
did. We had 15 guys, and myself and my partner. We had a pretty good career. We didn't make $1 million, but you know, we were comfortable. Then 9/11 hit. At that time, I decided to apply to law school, and at the age of 49, I entered law school.
Good time to start.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was strategic, not knowing it was prophetic, because by the time I graduated, there was no more business. So my brother was he still is actually. He was a mortgage broker, and he had a few clients he was passing on closings to, and he said to them, you know, my brother just got to law school. He was an older guy, you know. Wasn't going to no white shoe law firm. Certainly wasn't going to work for a government agency, because I was making more money self-employed. So that's how I got involved in the mortgage business. And I worked there until
So
the
tell
downfall.
us about the predatory.
This is what
mortgage.
happened.
Let's first of all, we
Yes.
started off with stand your ground move. Now you have a police background.
Well, no,
You went to the academy.
I almost went to the academy.
Almost went to the academy.
They closed the door on me
All right.
with a bunch of other people.
All right. Give me an idea of what this first piece we ran. What's your thoughts on that?
On
Stand
the-
your ground.
On stand your ground. The first thing that enters my mind that if we had a stand your ground ruling in the city of New York, we'd all be dead. This is the whole idea of stand your ground. When we were kids, we got standing your ground and you get into a fist fight. You know, not even knives. Today, everybody walks around with a gun. It's amazing how prevalent the use of firearms is. In the state of Florida, it's unbelievable. Standing around, if you feel intimidated, and by the way, it's against the law to be intimidated because it's considered an assault.
Right.
But in the state of Florida, if you're intimidated, you have the right to protect yourself based on your decision, which is an arbitrary decision, that you have scared me enough for me to pull out my firearm. The criminal law states that you can use deadly force when you see that someone's life is being threatened.
Right.
An argument is not a threat.
Right.
What happened, what was depicted 6 years ago, was an argument. Was not a threat.
Well, that was predatory. I mean,
he was actually stalking the guy.
Yeah, there you go.
What he did was he stalked him, thinking in his mind that he is a gentleman. Took it upon himself to make a life's decision to stop a man who's walking freely in the street. What his intentions were, we'll never know.
Well, he was known in the police department for stalking people.
He's the worst person.
Wannabe cop.
Yeah, the worst person. We call them Pepsi Cola cops. The worst person to be given authority because they will usurp that authority.
Well, this guy in the parking lot had been known to harass people about the,
Numerous occasions.
you know,
Which is
several different accounts where the store owner called the police on him. So he came there looking for a fight.
Yeah, and not even that, because he provocated that by approaching the car and where the guy's wife and his
Right.
kids were in the
Yeah,
car
yeah.
and started harassing them.
Yeah.
So of course, you know, the guy's in the store, and he comes
Right.
out and he sees this guy, you know,
As a
saying
provocateur,
things.
he
Yeah,
takes-
he
he-
provoked that
That's right.
situation.
Yeah. So what are you supposed to do? You know.
And he just pushed him
Yeah,
and didn't attempt to,
to go anything. He was
To go
backing up,
anything
as a
up.
matter of fact, and
No,
still
he's
he was
walking
talking
away.
with him, but he was backing up in the meantime. And that's how I'm not understanding. First of all, if you know you're saying you're standing your ground, okay, so you're standing your ground to the point that if you have a confrontation with someone, all right, and there is no further momentum by this person in your direction to attack you or to follow up on anything that may have preceded that there, then what are you standing your ground against? On what pretense are you standing your ground when there's no action that's actually happening at that point? So how does that justify you say you standing your ground to pull out your weapon and fire your weapon at someone that's not approaching you at that time?
And is not threatening you,
And is not threatening
as
you.
was seen in the video.
Doesn't make sense.
Look, you can make a parallel argument with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was
Oh,
established in the Constitution because these troops were quartering in people's homes without their permission.
right?
It doesn't give you, should not be interpreted as if it's okay, you know, that that you're allowed to purchase and use these submachine guns. What is the purpose of owning a submachine gun? So the interpretation could be taken differently, but we can go beyond that, because the NRA has
There you
so
go.
much money.
That's what's
If you are
behind it.
running for office and the NRA is against you, that's tantamount to losing the election. So you're going to sell your soul. Marco Rubio could not answer the question when the kid approached him and said, would you give up your support of the NRA? And Marco Rubio says, well, you know, I have my own agenda with Marco Rubio. I don't even know what that meant. But the fact was, what he was saying was, he said, you know, they support me and they support my platforms. I need their money. Now, does he support the NRA and the free proliferation of firearms? Maybe not. He's got a family. I don't think that he does, but he needs the money. Just like most of the Southerners do. You know, all of that whole red wing, right? That the right wing, they're supported by the NRA.
All right,
And you've got, depending on the geography in this country, that's going to tell you what is and what isn't.
Right.
Well, I'd just like to say, all of you out there, you need to concentrate on voting this year so we can do something about this president that we have, and something about all these stand your law grounds. We're in 33 states. This came about through gerrymandering. Most of these are Republican states, and it's a long process. The next census is 2020. But that's not too far away. I think Obama and several others are working on the gerrymandering that occurred in 2010. So stay tuned for more about this book, all right? So remember to vote and register to vote.
And
Because there are a lot of people out here, which we're going to talk about later, that have felons on their records, that here in New York State, they're trying to get their right. And Mario's one of these people fighting for the right to vote again after his incarceration. All right, so we're going to go into mortgages and what happened during the fall of 2008, 2009, when predatory lending on mortgages. And Mario's going to give us a little breakdown on how it's done. Let me run the clip first, and then we'll get to it. Run the clip on predatory lending.
Good morning. Hi, welcome to ABC Mortgage.
Thank you.
How can I help you?
Yes, I have a 10 o'clock with Mr. Watkins.
Okay, and what was your name?
Rosa Melendez.
Okay, well, go ahead and have a seat, and I'll let him know you're here.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tom. Rosa Melendez is here. Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Does he know that I'm still here waiting?
Yes, he does, ma'am.
Do you know how much longer it's gonna be?
No, I'm not sure, but he'll be with you as soon as he can.
Okay.
Hello? Oh, okay. Okay, I will let her know. Rosa?
Uh-huh.
Tom will see you now.
All right.
His office is right through there.
Okay. Thank you. Through here?
Uh-huh, it's just the second door on the right.
Okay.
Okay, Rosa. Well, we have a lot of documents here today, a lot of papers to go through, and because there's so many of them, we'll just go through the important ones. If you can sign this one, your assets and liabilities, just sign down there, right there. And here's the transactional. And sign that one, please.
What are all these blank spaces for?
Oh, well, don't worry about the blanks. We'll fill that in later just to save time. Just go ahead and sign that. I'll fill that in later.
Okay. So do you know what my interest rate is going to be?
Right. It's right down here, 7 3/4%.
Really? My friends just got one for 5 1/4. How come I'm getting 7?
Well, Rosa, you don't have the best credit. I'm assuming they have really good credit, excellent credit, and that's why they got such a low rate.
Well, I thought I had a good credit. Can I see my report?
Well, I'm sorry, we can't show you that. That information's all confidential.
They showed it to me at my last loan application I got.
Well, it's company policy. I'm sorry. You know, it's for liability reasons. There's nothing I can do about that. Just sign that one over here.
Well, you said I don't have good credit, but I know my score is like around 680. Isn't that considered good credit?
Well, that's just one factor they use in qualifying you. A lot of factors go into it. Your debt to income ratio, you know, whether you've been late on some of your payments to your creditors, how long you've been at your job. It's really pretty complicated. It could be any of those factors or a combination of those that could have put you in a lower bracket.
Okay, so you think this is a good rate?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very good rate. If you can sign that one there. Okay. You can just sign right there.
So what are all these fees?
Oh, those are just the normal fees. Everybody pays the same fees. I just need you to sign right there, okay?
Oh, can you explain them?
Well, I you know, it's just the normal fees. Everybody pays them. You know, I've got an appointment in a few minutes. If you can just sign that, and then I need you to sign that one right there, and we'll be all done. Okay, very good, Rosa. Well, I appreciate your business and enjoy your new house. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Call me if you have any questions.
Okay.
It sounds like predatory lending. Now, what was she was signing her life away?
She was signing, first of all, if I'm correct, he was making a number of points on the front end and then a number of points on the back end. So
those all the
let's
fees.
say, yeah, one of the problems is that we really didn't have a choice. If you wanted to keep your home, and at that time, interest rates were close to zero. In Japan, they were giving you money to put money into a savings account.
Okay.
That's how low the rates were. However, during that time, the administration said that everyone should be able to own their own home.
This is the Bush administration, 2007?
No, Bush was not even aware of what was going. This was before Bush. I don't want to mention his name because he was my favorite man, but I can't give him credit for that. But it was the administration prior to Bush, and in essence, conceptually it was a good concept. You would put 2%. You'd have no skin in the game, so to speak. Put 2% down. You got a $500,000 mortgage. You're putting $1,000 down. What incentive do you have to maintain it? Okay. However, if your credit was low, and they were giving these ridiculous mortgages at 5, 6, and 7%, when in fact the banks were making money. When the interest rate, the Federal Reserve rate was at 1%, and they're borrowing money at 7%. Right. Then if you went to a mortgage broker, the mortgage broker's got to make his points. So he would tack on those points. And then you'd have a person who would be paying more than they even earned. Because when you talk about predatory lending, it's people who don't make enough income to even qualify for the loan. But out of desperation, they would go to brokers like this, because these are C credit guys. Okay. An A credit guy is a guy who's AAA credit. He gives you AAA. You get your standard rate, your 2%. Your credit is outstanding, but you have a person who should not be buying a home. Okay. Their credit is 500. They should not be buying a home.
Well, she said she had a 680.
We don't know that. That's what she said. We don't know what he has in his document. But what was interesting,
is he supposed to tell her what's
absolutely. In it? Well, that's number two. That's issue number two.
Okay.
Because he wasn't. You're supposed to have full disclosure.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it's not the Experian and the standard credit reporting agency, because they don't really give you the true. They give you a consumer rating, but they don't give you the CIS rating. And the CIS rating is the private agencies that the banks use. And you can have a 680 or 700 on your Experian credit rating, but your CIS rating could be about 550, 600. Now, today, if you take a look at the charts, that's fair credit.
Okay.
700 is good credit. Anything above 700 is excellent credit. Most of the people fall in the realm of fair credit.
Okay. All right, let's cut to the chase. What my main point was, I wanted to see what did it take for all this buildup to go to the point where AIG was going to go bankrupt because they
packaged loans like this.
That's what I mean.
They were packaging loans like this, and they were selling it to the banks.
The world.
And the banks eventually, the bubble burst.
Right.
They couldn't fund them. Right. It's like getting a call from your broker.
Right.
All of a sudden the market falls, you got to cover, you just lost $100,000, you got to cover it. They couldn't cover it.
Okay.
But it wasn't just locally centered. It became an international problem. All the banks, too big to fail. They were failing. We bailed them out. We, as citizens, the federal government, because all of these people were losing their homes. Now, there was an out here. Because what we did is, when this new program came out by the federal government, now it kind of evolved into what's called HARP, but it was mortgage modifications, and if your income was dependent on your borrowing, right, you were able to compete, and you were able to afford a 2% mortgage, which was rightfully where the mortgage rate should have been, because the banks were making 3, 4, and 5 points. Okay. That's where the mortgage modifications came in. But prior to that, and this is where Bush, he didn't even have an omnibus guy. He attempted to bail it out. Obama comes in, and in 6 months, he has his staff and his administration. They not only qualify the whole program, they resolve the problems, and now people they're saving their homes. People who are earning, they have gainful employment, and they're able to afford it, as opposed to you spending, for, let's say, a $300,000 mortgage, paying $5,000 a month. Well, now with the mortgage modifications, you were down to something reasonable, which is 1/3 of your.
What did Obama do to turn everything around?
What he did was he instituted this program, He forced the banks
Okay.
because the banks were making money hand over fist.
Right.
And he said to them, you're all going to kick in and we're going to save the country and we're going to bail out this economy because this economy between, I think it was September 14th and September, it was a 48-hour window.
Mm-hmm.
The country was going to fall into deep bankruptcy and there was no money to do
So
it.
Obama saved this country.
Oh, absolutely, he saved this country. Let me tell you one other thing. He saved General Motors, and he
Right.
never got credit for it.
Okay.
And all that's happening now in the economy, everybody takes credit when things are going well, and everybody blames them when things are going well, going terrible. Someone told me years ago that it was Ronald. We had a great economy under Clinton. We did, because we had untold budget surpluses. They said that began with Reagan. Reagan, when you do some studying, Reagan didn't know very much.
And he raised taxes.
He did a lot of things, and now it's coming out
Right.
that in fact that he wasn't the greatest guy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Under Reagan,
Well,
I tell you, under Reagan, I can't complain because under Reagan, I think I earned a good
Well,
earned a
that
good
was
living.
the decade of greed, 80 to
Exactly. Yeah. So
The
I
decade
don't want to
of
spit
greed,
on
yeah.
him.
Come on.
But the fact is when they talk about the past, Bush, unfortunately, he was not a great president. Socially, he was a nice man, but he was not very smart.
Right.
And he was overwhelmed by this. When Obama came in, he had a team but within 6 months' time, he turned the economy around.
Okay. So we can save. Obama saved the country.
As far as I'm concerned, Obama walks on water.
Okay. Me too. Okay. Now, what got you in trouble in this mortgage business?
I stepped over the line.
You were one of these predatory lenders?
No, I did not. No,
Okay.
I wasn't a predator. I wasn't lending money.
Okay.
I was negotiating with other people's money.
Negotiating.
Negotiating with
Like-
other people's money. I lost it. It's
Investing.
my
Like
investment.
Bernie?
No, not Bernie. No, not a murder. No.
No,
What I would negotiate with
You
them.
put him
No,
up there
no.
with Bernie.
No, please.
Don't
No,
go up
I'm not that smart. No. I was foolish. I would use other people's money to negotiate on their behalf, and I would fight with the banks. And eventually.
But that's what Donald Trump's always done all his life.
Yeah, and look at how successful he is. Yeah, fight with the banks. But he walked away. I couldn't walk away. Eventually, it caught up with me, and I turned myself in.
You turned yourself in?
Yes, I did. I did. They actually, I have to say, they were very generous to me, because I was paying back restitution, but at a point in time where I just ran out of restitution, and they said, we got to end this. So
you tried to pay back the money?
I paid it back, but I still had to do time.
You paid the money back?
I gave fresh. Yeah, absolutely. I paid the money back.
You paid all the money back?
Paid the money back.
And still,
good for you.
And I
point of
still
doing time.
had to do my time.
There was no. Okay, if you pay the money back,
No, there was.
we'll
no.
give you.
No, it
leniency.
was. I was made an example of.
Oh, okay.
And I
Okay.
deserved it. I'm not walking away from it.
Okay.
I'm not blaming anybody else.
Okay.
This shouldn't have happened, especially with my upbringing.
Okay.
But out of desperation, everybody has problems.
Okay.
You try to bail out.
All right.
Not proud of what happened, but thankfully I recovered.
So tell us about your time in prison.
Oh, well, as I explained.
At what age you went in at 62?
I went in at 62. I went in at
So
62.
after all that life of
my whole
luxury?
like I said, when a man is when he works to get his golden palace, what possesses a man to risk everything? Desperation, losing everything. Wife was diagnosed with cancer. All these things, bills on top of bills on top of bills. Nobody knew what was going on. I was the only one. When my family found out, everybody was in awe. They looked at me and they said, when someone had asked us years ago, can we run a card game in your basement? I said, I'm in law school. What do you want me to do? Go to jail? Or cable. When they were doing what they called
cable.
Remember cable?
Yeah.
They would do the Fugazi setup so nobody would pay.
Oh, yeah.
I was the first one that said, you got to be crazy. I'm paying for cable. I'm not letting cable
Right.
come in here. Someone's going to be knocking on my door. So these are the examples that were brought up in my family. It says, Daddy, I would never believe it. But you know what? I'm human, I'm not infallible. I succumb to fear, and I'm not a guy that was afraid when I was growing up. I was took care of myself. Very little intimidated me, but I got scared. And I said, you know what? I need some time to make this thing up. Time never comes. You never think that way. It doesn't happen. So I took my medicine, did what I had to do, and I served it. Now, when I was inside, you know, I was, as I said, I was an anomaly. I wasn't your typical, you know, inmate.
Well, you weren't black.
I wasn't black. Okay, I don't want to say that. But, all right. So it wasn't easy, but you know, I had some
And
ingenuity.
what is it like, 62 years old, going into with the?
First of all, I'm not. You know, the food nearly killed me because it's not really food. The gangs, you know, they're fighting amongst themselves.
Yeah.
They tried to take advantage of me, but I made like a crazy man.
They left you alone.
And you know, I said I wanted to talk to the big boss, and the big boss came to me and said, you know, what's the matter?
Did you claim a mafia affiliate?
No, I did not. No. They thought I was, but no, they thought I was, but I did not do that.
You put the card on, like Mario.
But the guy said,
Mario,
no, I said, well, that's what it turned out to
comes the
be.
Godfather.
But you know, I had the head of the Bloods one day come to see me. And I said, because I talked to the kid and I asked him, you know, who's your boss? And he says, I don't have a boss. He says, I got my own thing. I says, you got to have somebody who's over you. He says, no, I'm nobody. I says, you know, you got it. I says, well, why do you say that? Because you're too stupid to be a boss. So the boss came to see me and he goes, oh, gee, what's your problem? I said, look, I just want to be left alone. You guys have your own thing in Tecate. I'm not here. I have no agenda. I just want to do my time quietly. I said, but I've lived my life. I'm in my 60s. I had a good life. I says, I may not make it out of here. I said, but I walk the dorm at night. And I promise you this, that if anything happens to me, you're going to get it in the middle of the night. It's your choice. So naturally, I was in a bad place, and I was, when I said that, I said I'm a dead man.
Right.
I'll never forget that night. I couldn't go to sleep. I had the covers like this. And the next morning, the boss comes over to me and says to me, you know, OG, you're all right. You need anything, we'll get it for you. Do your laundry. You know, stuff like that. I'll never forget, he gave me, he was a big guy with dregs. What they call them, dregs? Dregs, yeah, that's it. He gave me a pair of pajamas, you know, he says, they don't fit me. I couldn't believe what was going on, you know, and then I learned, I started to learn the rule to be inside. Stay away from everybody, stay by yourself, don't make any friends, don't trust anybody, don't be arrogant with anybody, don't be a tough guy with anybody. Just be respectful.
Please,
and I think my age helped me as well because I was older.
Yeah.
The CEOs were wondering what I was doing there.
Right.
You know, so they left me alone. I hooked up with a chaplain. She was wonderful. And then I wound up going, going to Manhattan. I was charged there because this was all part of the whole scheme. And then eventually I went to Nassau, and then from Nassau I went upstate. I did what they call the world tour. And it all followed me, you know, because I wasn't the typical, you know, inmate who was a troublemaker. You know, I used to talk to inmates and I'd say to them, I talked to, not to counsel them, I say, you know, what are you going to do when you get out? Because what am I going to do? He says, I've been in jail, in and out of jail for easily 30 years. He says, no one's going to hire me. I'm going to score some coke, get a couple of kilos, use some of it, and sell it because nobody's going to sign. Nobody's going to give me a job. It struck a nerve because I started talking to a lot of people that way. And the same thing, because this perpetuates, this life perpetuates itself. I used to hear conversations, well, you know, in the 80s it wasn't like this. I'm looking at a 54-year-old man. What do you mean in the 80s? He goes, I've been in and out of jail since I was 16. It just made you sick. The administration itself, you had a guy in there who was the commissioner for many, many years, old guy. He went out, he retired recently, a few years ago, because he didn't have the pulse anymore. The job is a dangerous job. I mean, every day I hear, somebody just beat up a correction officer the night before last. They left him for dead. 2 days ago, he was sliced in Rikers. This is constant. This is what's permeated there. And then you have an administration that says, you know, they're children. They're not children, they're grown men. You know, but they have no backing. They have no family life. The family is the people inside. That's their family. That's how they're so easily convinced to join a gang, because they really don't have, they have no support system.
So you're in a position now where you're trying to help?
Absolutely. What I did is I organized a company. It's called My Freedom Services. It was really based on a gentleman who helped me while I was upstate. And what I do is, I don't do legal work. I'm not licensed to practice law. I can read and write. That's my forte.
And you found a lot of people in there couldn't read or write?
97% of the people are illiterate.
Yeah.
The
older, and you'd be surprised, as Mario indicated. Older people.
The Hispanics, the ones that are in jail for being here illegally, they're in perpetuity. I helped them, submit ICE applications because most of them don't want to go back to their country because they're going to get killed. That's the reason. And the judges, I have to say, they've been, from what I've seen and what I've heard, they've been very sensitive to this.
Okay.
But I don't know from firsthand.
Right.
But from what I heard while I was inside, we need to submit an application. That's how I learned how to do that as well. This is what you do. Tell me about how you grew up. Tell me about what your family life was like.
Right.
Tell me what you did growing up as a teenager. Tell me about your employment history. Tell me about your family. Tell me about how you got here. What happened to you?
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's what they want to hear. And then tell me what plans you have if and when you get out. Do you have a social structure? Do you have people behind you? Do you have a place to go? Is anybody going to help you? This is what I did for myself.
Okay.
The average hearing was 5 minutes. I had a captive audience, 3 commissioners, all lawyers, by the way. I was with them. I clocked it. I think I was with them for almost 59 minutes. They went. First of all, they made me cool my heels for 40 minutes. They said, "Would you mind if we see them? Because we want to take a look at your file."
He's talking about parole board.
The parole boards.
Okay.
The parole boards. Because that's what I do.
Right. Okay.
I gave them a 90-page docket with everything, with my history, my disciplinary history, my letters of support, my plans for getting out, employment promised, going back to my home, from a stable family, worked hard my whole life. And this is what I presented to them. And I hit the jackpot because they were, and what I said to them was, I didn't make a mistake. So you know what a mistake is? A mistake is when you're going to the beach and you take the wrong turn off the highway. I didn't take a wrong turn. I thought I'd get away with it. I did it. I'm guilty. I'm done. I'm not blaming it. He said, what about your co-defendant? I says, I don't know about a co-defendant. He didn't put a gun to my head. I did this willfully. I was desperate. I was afraid. First time in my life I was scared. I thought I was going to lose everything. I did something I wasn't supposed to do. And let me tell you something. It is the worst thing I could ever have done. I told them, as I told you, I said, if I could go back 5 years, I want to shake that guy up and say, what do you think you're doing?
Right.
Because I remember every aspect of what happened. And if I would not have gotten out of my car, or I was standing there in front of me to stop me, where do you think you're going? What do you think you're going to do? Because $1 million is not worth going to jail for. But for $1, you got to be out of your mind. You got to. Thomas Becket told his intern, he says, your life is not worth the universe. You don't sell your soul for the universe, but you sold it for England? That's what he said. You know, there's no freedom. You know what the cost of freedom? Can you tell me what the value of freedom is? Can you give me
I can't put none.
You can't.
I can't put
That's
none.
where I wound up, and that's what I'm doing now, and I'm helping a lot of people. Thankfully, we've yet to lose one. You know, and I love what I got back into the game. I love what I'm doing. I love to fight. I love to go up against, you know, the administration. I just love because they're wrong, because they're unprepared, but they have the power.
And I just want to just add in because, and I met Mario. I'm so happy I did meet him through his partner that actually was here watching us do a show. She was here, you know, standing off on the side, and when we finished and I walked out, she asked me what was my name, and we started talking, and she told me that she had someone that had been inside that is out now and is doing some wonderful things, and she thought that I should meet him. Okay. Subsequent to that, you know, we eventually got together, but what really interested me about Mario when he told me what he does. And what he does is prepare people's packages for when they go to the parole board so that they can have a successful interview and get released as a result of having a pack. Because that's just so important. And just to quickly, the point that he said about going to the parole board with a plan, okay, and being able to lay out what your plan of living and how you're going to maintain and manage yourself and stay crime-free. That's so very important. And what happens oftentimes is why some of the contributing factors is that people don't go to parole board with a complete plan for living. They're unprepared to answer questions that may be asked of them, is that how are they going to do this? How are they going to do that? But when you have some plan and you have a tangible, solid plan, your chances of release are so much greater. And that's one of the things that, you know what I'm saying, I admire Mario for the work that he's doing in terms of being able to help the families as well as the people that are incarcerated to prepare for these parole board hearings so that they can eventually be released. Because one of the things that, you know, I do with regards to criminal justice reform, and we were successful in getting the parole board commissioners replaced with parole commissioners that were more progressive in terms of looking at a person's progress since they've been inside, the changes they have made and the preparations they have made for themselves to return back to society. And as a result of that, the release rate has gone up. Herman Bell got out. Had we not been able to be successful in getting the parole board commissioners replaced, he probably would have still been in. But he also had a good plan for living. And he had good parole commissioners.
So before we go to solitary confinement, I'd like to hear more about the ability to, you have a fill-in, and I remember you telling me that you had a problem getting a job.
Yeah, I did. I just want to add to Victor quickly. It's a technical issue. It's interesting, in the state of New York, you cannot appear with anyone in front of the parole board. You have to appear yourself, which means you have to sell yourself. That's where I come in. Okay, so I have to prepare you to go before the board. In the state of California, on the other hand, you can have an attorney represent you. I don't know if that's good or bad, but can you imagine the intimidation factor when you have to, these three guys are going to decide on you, within 5 minutes they're going to decide on your future. So you have to go in there understanding what really the dynamic is that you're facing.
So you have to spend quite a bit of time with these people.
Yeah, well, we spend anywhere between 25 and 50 hours. This is the good part about it. The upside is that if your hearing is 6 months from now, I have a very good chance of preparing you the best that I could do for you, preparing you in the brightest light in front of that commission, as opposed to you calling me a week before you go, because I have to do the research. And let me tell you something, this is labor intensive. Now, let me get into your question about, when I got out, I couldn't get a job. Forget about what I had, my degrees, I have 3 degrees, including a law degree. They didn't want to hear it.
But you knew people.
The one guy, he was a contractor, he says, I need for you to do some paperwork for me, we're going to put you on the payroll. Thankfully. Social Security and that. Okay? I must have put out at least 1,000 resumes. And I firmly believe that they Googled me.
Right.
And if you see
Of
my
course,
Google,
of
yeah,
course, of
nobody's going to
course.
call me.
All right.
Yeah, so once in a while, somebody would call me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I gave up. Then I went, I don't want to mention the name of this employer that I have, I really can't. They're a major company in this country, major company, internationally major. And they did a background check on me. And they made me an offer and they hired me. Unbelievable. I said, when they called me, I was interviewed 4 times. And they made me the offer. They said, you have to have, we want you to start in 6 weeks, but you have to pass the criminal background check. At which point I called up the supervisor and I said, I've got to see you personally. And they said, well, I don't have time, it's a payroll week. He says, look, I'm going to be in Manhattan. I promise it'll only take 10 minutes of your time. And I went in and I said, I really got to tell you something. She goes, well, what is that? She says, I have a criminal background. I said, so I want you to know, I appreciate everything you did. Thank you so much for interviewing me. But if this is a deal breaker, let me not waste any more of your time. And I thank you very much for being so gracious and offering me a job.
They knew it already?
And they knew. They said, we'll see what comes up. I started work the next week. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
I was very fearful of anything. Now, I just recently applied for a paralegal job for a law firm. They're looking for bilingual paralegals with a background in immigration. And before we started the interview, I told them. I had the woman, the interviewer, and I said, look, this is my story, and she was very heartfelt about it. She says, look, I don't own the company. She says, you're very qualified. I can't make that final decision. I says, look, I understand that, but I want you to know where I'm coming from. I don't want you to think that you may make me an offer, and then I deliberately obscured information. Okay. So this is where I'm at. And if you don't, I'll understand clearly. I couldn't even get a job at Postmates. They wouldn't hire me because of the background. I went to Business Link in the city of New York, another food delivery place. Went for the background check. They says, we can't hire you because of your background. I applied for a job as a substitute teacher, Department of Education recently, which I'm fighting now. They say that a background will not prevent you or discriminate against you.
They say.
For application. I have the information with me. I'll make copies, I'll give them to you. We got to read this thing. What they said was abominable. Now, where do we draw the bar? We're not hiring you because you're a felon, but you say that you hire felons. So where is it written? Where is the formula that says, well, he did this and he did this and he did this, we'll hire him here, but he did that? We don't know because there's no barometer. And I'm so angry about it. And I haven't stopped. I mean, I'm pursuing this. But this is what's happened. So if somebody gets out, what shot do they have? You know what shot they have? They can become a janitor. They could serve food in the back at Wendy's. They could clean out toilets. I did it when I was inside. But there's no shot.
What sort of hope do you give a black man with even less of a background in you?
My point is, it's not exist. Opportunities don't exist. I got an education by guys on the inside of what they're facing. Because I'm facing the same thing. I'm in the same category that they are. I had a little bit of a head start because I have a little bit of a background. But a lot of guys inside they can't read or write. They write notices and they can't even conjugate sentences. Forget about the Hispanics. They can't speak English. And they can't communicate with the administration. They don't care. Look, a correction officer's job is to be a babysitter. That's all they're there for. They're not there they're not social. They're not supervisors. They're not social workers, and they don't want to be. They're interested in putting in extra time to make extra hours. I don't think I've seen a CEO who doesn't drive a car less than a Range Rover. because they make a lot of money.
What about the white supremacists
White
supporting?
supremacists, let me tell you, upstate, I don't know if they're white supremacists, but they have, how do you say it, contempt for us from downstate, contempt. I was in a facility where 3 guys who weighed over 250 pounds nearly killed a 140-pound individual. And they wouldn't let the media in, they wouldn't let the governor's office in. I think it's still being adjudicated. But this is what they do. They exist and operate with impunity, which is a terrible thing because there's no law. So they operate independently, and you see it. You see it. And you have to be careful because you get hurt inside, there's nothing you can do about it.
Let's talk about solitary confinement. I mean, that's got to be your pet. I had a roll-in for it, but we only got 8 minutes left.
Okay.
So let's talk about the solitary confinement.
Yeah, so
coming up.
thank you, and thank you for my colleague being here. So, as I have mentioned before, we're doing a campaign that's called HALT to end solitary confinement in New York State, as it's restricted to only 15 days. But as our ongoing and continuing educational outreach process to inform and hopefully to empower and get the community to become involved to help get this bill passed, we're doing next week, August the 14th, 15th, and 16th, 3 events under the title of Dismantling Injustice. And this is being hosted by the New York Campaign for Alternatives to Isolated Confinement, in which I am the New York statewide organizer for. And we're actually bringing our solitary confinement replica cell to all 3 of these events and give people an opportunity who don't have a clue as to the type of things that people are exposed to while they're in prison that oftentimes causes them great psychological damage, which in turns make them incapable of functioning into society once they are released. And oftentimes people go into solitary confinement that do not have psychological problems, but because of the trauma that they're endured under, they come out with psychological damage. So we're actually doing 3 events, and I'm just going to give you the dates and the locations. And I invite the listening public audience to take some time to come to at least one of these events, talk with the people of solitary confinement survivors, talk to us that's doing the campaign to get the bill passed. So on Tuesday, August the 14th, we're going to be in Yonkers, and it's going to be at the Grinton Will Library that's located at 1500 Central Park Avenue in Yonkers, New York, and it's going to be from 6 to 8. On Wednesday, August the 15th, we're going to be in Brooklyn. We're going to be at the Bridge Multicultural Project located at 1894 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. And that event is going to also be from 6 to 8 p.m. And then on Thursday, August the 16th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., we're going to be in Staten Island. We're going to be at the South Shore YMCA, located at 3939 Richmond Avenue in Staten Island. And we're going to have panel discussion. We're going to have the solitary confinement replica cell. And we're going to have audience participation and audience interaction. And we're going to be talking about this horrendous, torturous situation of placing people in solitary confinement, using this as a punitive measure, as they say, to make people become better. That just does not happen. And we need people to understand what type of tortures and horrors and abuses that happen to people once they go to jail. They say, yeah, lock them up and throw away the key. You lock them up and throw away the key, then what happens to the person once they come out? What are they going to be like when they come out? Oftentimes, people are not the same when they go in as when they come out. And they have done some things to improve their lives. Mario is an example of one of those people. But everybody that go in is not a bad person.
Right.
So a person that go in shouldn't be treated badly. So we're doing this as an educational process, and we do hope and invite the audience to come to at least one of these events.
You might mention Khalif Browder. That's one of the most extreme cases that we can talk about, how a young mind was put into this condition, and out of the 3 years he was in prison, I think two and a half of it was in solitary confinement. And he eventually committed suicide because the demons were haunting him. He had fear of going back in. But there's a lesson to be learned by all this. And Mario, I appreciate you being here today. You showed us an outlook that we seldom see. Normally, we see people going through the system, spending 24 years at a time. I think we had a guy who spent 30-something.
33 years.
33 years.
Yeah.
And he came out and he was sane. So, I mean, it's a torturous endeavor. But you going in at 62 and never doing nothing, but seeing the ills of the system, you come out and wanting to do and help. And I think it's a cleansing thing for all of us out here to see what we can do for our brethren struggling through the system. Because there's so many disadvantages of being black and in life, but we find a way through it. But having advantages and then seeing your brother being tortured and you going through the same ills and having your background and still finding the same tortures. But one last thing is about voting. Now, this is something that we really have to pay attention
Absolutely.
to.
And you also know, just to mention the voting, and hopefully we can help Mario out here because we were, successful at least getting the governor to, say executive order to allow people in New York State to vote that are on parole and have a felony.
Well,
And
Mario, you're going to lead this charge, right?
Yes, and not only that, just so everybody understands, you briefly mentioned gerrymandering at the beginning of this.
Right, right.
The interesting thing about gerrymandering is that we as prisoners, we are counted in the apportionment, but we can't vote.
Right, right.
That's the biggest fraud that affects us, and no one is acting on it. We could reapportion here, and it builds up, your constituency, but your constituency, half of it can't vote.
That's right.
Right, right.
So it's an institutionalized fraud that the public has to be made aware of, or that we have to go after our representatives and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? So, yes, I had, look, born and raised in the South Bronx, I grew up poor. I fought my way in the streets. I was a big kid, so I wasn't afraid of anybody. I never forgot.
The little guy. Thank you for coming, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. Power to people. The God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned for more information about voting. Now make sure that power to the people. We can continue for another minute. But this is the most important part of this whole exercise here is you've got to vote. You've got to realize how important it is. You have a dog in the fight, because eventually it'll come around. If you don't appreciate what goodness you got from Obama, every time we talked about Obama was a blessing from God. I'm 77, okay?
Okay.
So, I mean,
we're still here. We're still here. We're
old
still here.
school, whereas, I didn't think about doing anything wrong.
No.
That's where we were raised.
Yeah, right.
So this new generation is
it's a little different.
at an
Participation.
advantage,
I think
disadvantage.
it's important that you participate in
But you gotta
anything
vote.
that has to do with your life, especially when you're talking about these miserable, horrible policies that disenfranchise people, takes resources away from people, takes opportunities away from people.
Power to the
Something
people.
that we have to
God
do
bless.
and keep on.